Shalom, Shalom, Israel. This is Brother Nalah, representing the House of Israel. And I'm coming back with another commentary. Today's commentary I want to do on discipline. So I've entitled it Lack of Discipline and the Three Marshmallow Dynamic. So to get right into things, what you may ask is the three marshmallow dynamic. First, I'll run it back to basically, you must be aware that Esau studies us many times and knows us better than the average black person in this United States of America knows themselves, because any great person of war or studied person of war knows that you have to know your enemy as well as yourself, or better than yourself, and definitely you have to know the enemy better than they know themselves, and that gives you the ultimate advantage. It can work on an entire race, and it can work on a person. If you know a person better than they know themselves, then you're in a position to dominate over that person. So if you know, and if one race knows another race better than they know themselves, you're definitely going to dominate over them. So with that said, to bring it back to Esau's think tanks and their professionals and their doctors and their FBI and CIA studies and research done on our people since as long as there have been research departments in the government, we've been the favorite topic of study. So just as in the doll test, where they would put black children inside of a room with a test administrator and give them a Caucasian doll, a white doll, and give them a black doll and ask them a series of questions, mainly which one is bad, which one is good, which one is smart, which one is dumb, which one is pretty, which one is ugly, and so on and so on and so forth. And of course, 75 to 80% of our people, like 2/3 of what it is, the percentage always seems to match up with 2/3, always pick the black doll with all the negative connotations and always pick the white doll with all the positive connotations. So along with that study, there's another study that Esau has done that people are not familiar with as much as they are familiar with the doll test. It's the marshmallow test. The marshmallow test is basically similar to the doll test in that you're going inside of a room with an administrator, a test giver, and they'll sit a child. This time, the difference between the doll test, they usually would pick African American children, or aka black children, or Israel, in the room, but the marshmallow test is much more multi-ethnic, because that's how they can gauge it better, because it's more of a gauge test than gauge as far as gauging where the races, the psychology of the races and their decision-making stands. Where the doll test was internal, more of an internal self-view test. The doll test was more an internal view, and the marshmallow test was more decision-making and contemplation test.
No matter what the race of the person, makes a man more likely to commit crimes, primarily of violence, but other crimes as well. Furthermore, an inability to defer gratification. And you can prove this if you take a group of white children, a group of black children, and you say to them, you have a choice of either one marshmallow now or 3 marshmallows a half an hour from now. Asian children are more likely to say, well, I'll wait and I'll get the 3 marshmallows. Then the Asian are the most likely, then comes whites, then comes blacks. Black children want that one marshmallow now, even if it means they don't get 3 marshmallows in a half an hour. That kind of mentality of being unwilling to sacrifice now for the future lends itself to a kind of smash and grab mentality that makes people more likely to commit crimes. So it's a combination of those 3 things. And you.
So with that said, they would send a child into a room and have them with a plate with one single marshmallow on it, whether it was a black child, a white child, or an Asian child. So they asked the child, you can eat, they'll entice the child to tell you how good the marshmallow is. Doesn't that marshmallow look good? And it's good enough to eat. It's sweet. You like marshmallows? And of course, the kid would say yes, they want. Would you like to eat the marshmallow? Of course, the kid would say yes. And then they'll come and say, well, if you eat that marshmallow now, okay, it's fine, you can enjoy it. But I'll tell you what, I'm going to leave the room for 15 minutes. When I come back, I'll have 2 more marshmallows. So you'll have 3. So if you can hold on and not eat that marshmallow, that one marshmallow, I'm going to come back in 15 minutes and give you 2 more. You'll have 3 marshmallows. So as they did the study with the different races, the black children, the white children, and the Asian children had enough discipline to wait. I think their percentage was off the charts. Their percentage was like almost 100%. It was in the high 90s. So if they did this test on 100 children, probably 99 out of those 100 Asian children did not eat the marshmallow. They waited for the 3. They waited for the 2 more. They waited the 15 minutes out for the 2 more marshmallows to come in. Esau did about 50-50, where half of the Edomite children ate the marshmallow and then half of them contemplated and waited. And of course, our people, black male and female children, they did the opposite. 75 to 80% of the black children ate the marshmallow without waiting. Now, a lot of the average black person would be appalled that that test exists. They will try to give excuses. Oh, that's racist, it's unfair. They'll give you many excuses, but sometimes you got to take Esau's test and do a self-evaluation. These tests are cut and dry. They're not trickery. The only trickery is Esau likes to use that. The white supremacists like to use that as a weapon to throw in your face. So that's the only bad thing. But the outside of that is cut and dry, just like the doll test. The doll test, you had black people give that test and it was the same results. So the test itself is not trickery, it's just Esau can use it as a weapon. That's why they do it. That's why they do the FBI psychological research, and they did many other things. Why black people talk in the theaters, why black people, Zabak had brought this up recently, why they would destroy a bus stop shelter where the glass is you can sit on the bench, and why they want to shatter the glass. This is all reality. So there are reasons behind that, and they studied the reasons why they do that. So with that said, the reason why there's so many layers, it runs so deep why the black children would snatch the marshmallow and not wait when he would get 3. It's how in your developmental years, how you're raised. And in this country, for the past, we're pretty much roughly, give or take a few years, in the 50th anniversary of fatherless homes in Black America, where 50 years ago was 1968. We're in 2018, it was 1968. So around the mid 60s to late 60s is when the fathers start to disappear out of the black home. And out of all the curses we have been under in this country, I would say that's definitely in the top 3. the missing fathers out of the home, because it caused it to really break it down. You would need 100 books to break down every aspect. You would need 100 commentaries to break down every aspect of what happens when you take a father out of a nation's home, where the father, I'm talking about nationwide, Black Americans and also Caribbeans and Hispanics too. We all one nation, and we suffer from the same issues. That's why they always say Black and Latino, because all our issues reflect each other equally. So 50 years of not having that is one of the major aspects of having a bunch of children, millions of children across this country growing up with no father, creating millions of neighborhoods, and then millions of results of that is tied into why the Black children took the marshmallow, where the other races fared better in being disciplined. You have the father pretty much sets the tone for telling the child to stop, to start, to go. And when you don't have that, when you have the mother and the grandmother raising the children, a lot of the raising of the, and this is not to knock Eve, because we talk about a lot about the father's homes as if being raised by a mother is horrible. It's not. I mean, it's a survival instinct, and it's necessary, because if the mother doesn't do it, then who's going to do it? But on the same token, there has to be balance in the household. There has to be the father there, especially on the massive scale that we started to lose the fathers, because you're going to have an abnormal side effect of that to create a bigger picture. If what happened to Black people happened to any other race or culture or country or society, they would be in ultimate crisis mode. Can you imagine if all the East Edomites, if 75 to 80% of Edomite household, the father just left? You know how much crisis mode Esau would be in? They would go crazy. Or that happened to the East Indian, Elam, or that happened to Moab, where Chinese fathers just started to abandon their homes. They would be in full-scale crisis mode. It would be a national crisis. They would have meetings and governmental meetings about it. They would have laws passed. It would be crazy. But we're the only group, so-called ethnic group, that has that and is taught by the world that accept it. That's just how it is. And then we have accepted that because it's been 50 years. So 50 years, out of 50 years, you can get 5 generations out of that. As much as 5 generations, sometimes 4, maybe 3. So in other words, the person that's a teenager now, that's a child now, he could easily have a grandparent, of course, that grew up in a single parent home in that era, and even more so, even a great grandparent. So that's how many generations down we are seeing these fatherless homes, and it is the lack of discipline is a major side effect of that. That's where the root of it is. So what happens is, when you have the Black woman for the past 50 years that's been raising hundreds of thousands, millions even, of Black men, there have been, of course, many success stories. There's many Black men that were raised in single homes and their success stories, but it's still a very unbalanced way for a society of people to be. So the majority of it is not success stories. I think 70% of it had a very negative effect, in the sense that you could not live up to your potential. It puts you at a deficit, and any deficit is bad. Any deficit means you have to come back from behind. So 3 three major things out of this deficit of the father's home, particularly in the black male, because the male is the head, as much as this society wants to promote Eve, and not even Eve, but the white woman and the feminist movement, the male is the head of the household, ordained by the Most High. So when you remove that, you're tampering with the Most High's ordinances. So when you do that, there are three major things that happen, amongst many, but these, in my opinion, are the top three of what happens when you raise a male child, or a black man, or Hispanic man, or Native American man, in the realm of all these women and all that feminine emotional energy. Number one, they'll become a bully. When you're raised by women and the child is acting wild and acting crazy and has no discipline, a lot of times that energy turns into bullying energy. So the child he's around all these women, which many times a bully has been dominated in his home. So you have a mother, a grandmother, aunt, whoever you're feeling dominated by. They go out into school, go out into the playground, go out into the streets, and they want to dominate other people to compensate for the lack of power they feel at home, which once again is a lack of discipline. So it's a lack of discipline to be a bully, because you're not controlling your emotions. You want to will your power over somebody else for the lack of power that you have. So those guys end up becoming chain snatchers, and it starts out as petty crimes. First, it starts out as them hitting people. You'll hear so and so, when he was 7 or 8, got in trouble in school for smacking somebody in the head, taking a chair, throwing at his classmates, over teasing his classmates and trying to get power. And it starts out there, and then it eventually graduates to petty crimes, snatching chains, stealing sneakers. And of course, ultimately, it's going to go into the bigger crimes, drug sales. Those are the people that become like the neighborhood drug dealer, or even the kingpin, of that Nino Brown type of person. So that's what that single parent does on one level. The second level it does, if it doesn't do the bully, it'll turn Jake into a big baby, which we see that I think the baby aspect is way more than the bully, especially now. I think the bullies were more in the 80s and 90s. We in this new generation where Jake is just a baby. What happens is these Eves have generations upon generations of being screwed over by a lot of Jakes. A lot of times these male children they have, they're a reminder of that Jake. Sometimes they look like that Jake. Many times they look like the Jake who's the father of the child. And the mother will take consciously and subconsciously take her anger out on her son. So to the point where she mentally castrates him. So when if you were to castrate a child physically, that child would not have testosterone or things to develop, or his voice wouldn't even change. And I'm not saying they do it, I'm using it as an analogy. So if you castrate a male child mentally, the same sort of effect happens, where they lose the ability for growth. So that castration usually has them stuck at the age where they would right before they would turn into a man. So roughly about 13 or 14, where the voice changes and the body structure gets different. Their body will still look the same, but then their mind is stuck there because they were mentally castrated. So that's all the Jakes you see with the pants sagging down. That's all the Jakes you see that are 18, 19, 20 years old, still screaming and acting a fool in the streets. Pretty much anything you see on World Star Hip Hop, that's all Jake turning into a baby, which is another case of lack of discipline, which is by and large from the single parent home, and then ultimately the single parent community we live in. So Jake acting like a baby is not being corrected by anything, because by and large a lot of black women really don't mind Jake acting like a baby. I mean, because if they did mind it on a massive level, I'm not saying independently there are a few Eves that don't like it, but I'm talking more in a general sense that it's not a consensus of not liking it because it would stop. So the fact that Eve keeps Jake as a baby, it actually makes her feel needed. It makes her feel, because if she did not have that man in the house, at least she has her son, somebody to rule over, somebody to take care of. So that's when that Jake baby boy spirit comes in, and it's horrible. There's a whole different commentary on Jake being a baby, the Jake baby spirit. So the third thing that happens as a result of the lack of father, which goes into lack of discipline, and it ties into the three marshmallow dynamic, which is just a outside aspect of a bigger issue, is the sodomy. You will turn into gay, or like I said, once again, that in this generation, as we're moving into the 50th year, by and large, of the black man being removed out of the household in the head of the family structure, we see every year, it seems like, definitely every 5 years, is a major drastic shift of sodomy. So as far as the male is concerned, it can go two ways. It can go two ways with how the male becomes a sodomite. One, the woman is so overbearing, sort of like the Monique's character in Precious, where she's just a bitter, evil black woman that's really dominating over her son or daughter, that the black, when it's a male, the black male wants nothing to do with, like, your mother is the first woman in your life. So if all the childhood memories are just horrific, he ends up not having a disdain for females in general. That whole female energy becomes disdain, which is a lack of balance, which is putting something out of balance, to have a disdain for a female if you're a male. So he goes to, on top of that, those women that are dominating like that usually don't have a husband in the house. So it's a 1-2 combo. You have a mother who spent the entire childhood dominating over the male, castrating him, and then there's no father there. So then the evil spirit comes in, well, I hate women because I hate my mother, and I want to be with men because I never had a father. So then the affection, the yearning for a man comes into play in a sexual way, and then due to the hatred of the woman and the lack thereof. So that's when it's that's how that spirit of the fatherless home turns into sodomy. On another swing of the pendulum, it can come from too much affection from the black woman. It can from that grandmother that just cooked, cleaned, did everything. That this goes along with the baby. It almost ties in with the same thing, but in the sodomy way. That the Jake almost fell in love with his grandmother or his mother, to the point where he wants to embody that. That's love to him. Once again, and usually there's no father in the house, or there's no male figure in the house. Then he ends up taking on the attributes of that female, being under all that feminine energy in the house, and he actually wants to become the female. And once again, there's no father there, so he yearns for that counterbalance of the male coming in. So then he's attracted to male because he was so overloved by the black woman that he ends up wanting to be the black woman. And that's when you see those women, those guys in drag, RuPaul, because if you listen to his story, no father, and he was just in love with his mother and his grandmother. He loved to wear their makeup and all that stuff. And then Tyler Perry is another example of that, where he had a bad experience with his father, was molested, but the grandmother in his family has loved them to death to where you want to embody that, and then you become a sodomite because of that. So it's sort of the similar thing when Eve turns into a sodomite. You'll have the same thing goes with Eve, the bully, the baby, and the sodomite. But the baby, in respect to Eve, is that she'll just be very immature, and those are the Eves that want to fight everybody in the street. That's Eve's version of being a baby. Like, she doesn't want to grow up. She wants to constantly be that fifth grade schoolyard bully fighting type of Eve. That's how Remy Ma got put in prison. That's how Nicki Minaj is that same Eve that wants to be 12 years old in junior high, wants to fight Shaniqua after school in the playground. That's Eve's version of the baby, and the bully, sort of the combination of that. When Eve becomes a sodomite, it's sort of the same dynamic. A lot of times the black woman is jealous of her daughter, so there's conflict that's there. And then Eve has a mommy issue, which she still wants that validation and love from no female, and she ends up trying to be with a female. And once again, that comes from her not being raised in a household where there was a healthy mother and father dynamic to where she can mold her life after that, where her developmental years didn't see that. And then sometimes, Eve was molested as a child, which, there should be a father. Sometimes it's by the father, but if it's not the father, there was no father there protecting her, or men wasn't there, whether it was the father or not that caused the molestation, there was no male protection. So they end up trying to become the male. That's why you see those studs. Those studs are so uncomfortable. Their femininity is so traumatic that they have to take on the role of a man to heal themselves. Like I said, which is all connected to no father, which is connected to lack of discipline, which then branches. It's like a big tree, and it branches off into these different leaves and branches. The thing is, since we've been in this country, we've constantly been in a state of survival. There's never a time when black people have been in the United States of America and been out of survival. We're constantly in survival mode. So to go back to the 3 Marshmallow dynamic, it happens when you feel like what I need is, when you're in survival mode. To make an analogy, if you were drowning, your natural instincts is to grab onto anything that can keep you afloat and keep you from drowning. That's why if you're drowning, somebody throws you the round lifesaver raft, and you grab onto it, because for that moment, that's your survival. Or somebody can throw a long piece, a 2x4, a piece of wood into the water. You'll grab onto anything. If somebody, a lifeguard jumps into the water, you'll grab onto the lifeguard because you're looking for anything. So the marshmallow is like grabbing for the dynamic, the mental dynamic is sort of the same. It correlates the same way, where something is right in your face, and your mind is so wired to be in survival mode on a subconscious level. Not that a child would know he's in survival mode, but you're coming from a community environment, a tribe, a race that is in survival mode. You develop instincts. So your instincts is to grab it when you can grab it. It's not about contemplating for the future. If you're drowning, you're not thinking about, okay, I'm going to see if I can learn how to swim right now, and later on I'm going to go home and do some chores. No, you're thinking about, I need to live right now, so I need to grab something. So with that said, we have been in survival mode since slavery. So there was never any time as a race that we've moved, because, for example, if you use an analogy of someone who had who was very sick or had a bad car accident, somebody who's in the hospital, and they may be in a state of critical condition. So the object is to keep them alive until they can be in stable condition, and eventually move from stable condition to a prosperous condition, to a healthy condition. So we are still in a critical condition. So our instincts are developed around a critical condition. So that is why our instinct and lack of discipline has us wanting, lacking of contemplation, which is going tied into the marshmallow test once again, because the whole idea of the marshmallow test is to contemplate, to sit there and think, okay, if I wait 15 minutes, I'm going to have twice as much as I have now. As a matter of fact, 3 times as much. So I'm going to stop and think and before I react. And what that test is showing you, that black people don't have, by and large, don't have that hardwired into our mind. If we did, so that discipline is so important, because it would set so many things in motion. It would set the family order in motion. It would set obesity in motion. It would set crime in a different motion. It would just shift so many different things. That's why, as silly as that test might seem, using like candy, marshmallows, but it goes deep, deep, deep into the psyche of a black child, which is going to eventually become a black adult and a black parent in a black part of the community and a black part of the race. So that's why it's so heavy. To use the marshmallow analogy again, as far as trying to grasp onto something quick and not think about the big picture, black people tend to do that with dreams. For example, in the New York City school system in particular, we have something called specialized schools. So those are schools that really smart kids go into. Like, in order to get inside those specialized schools, you have to take an exam. So you have to be on point on all subjects: reading, math, writing, science, and what have you. It has to be almost on a college level. And you're about 13 or 14 when you take that test. I took the test myself for a school called Brooklyn Tech. So it sort of correlates with the marshmallow test, because if you look at the population of, I believe there's about 4 or 5 what they call specialized schools in New York. You have Brooklyn Tech, a school called Stuyvesant, a school called LaGuardia, Bronx High School of Science, etc. And you look at the population, most of those schools, the population is majority Asian, then white, then Hispanic, then black. Black is every specialized school, black people are on the bottom of the list as far as the population. It'll be like very low percentage blacks. And what that's saying is that these other nations view their success on their education, which eventually lead into whatever field they're going into to prosper. They're in a mode of prosper. Like I said, we're constantly in this mode of survival. So education in our homes is not a big priority. Like our parents, whoever raised them, black people, especially in my experience, it was like, just go to school and just be there and get by. There's no extra attention paid on trying to excel. It's like, just go there, just be there and get by, but don't excel. Not that they're saying that directly, but there's no incentive from the average black parent for their child to excel. Now, like I said, there's exceptions to every rule, but I'm talking in the most general sense. So what a problem is with us, with this same thing as going into the marshmallow effect, is we like to, the same sense of grabbing that marshmallow off the plate, we like to grab onto dreams. So the dream of becoming the rapper, the dream of becoming the football player, the dream of becoming, of course, the basketball player. When you think about if you combine, let's say, the 2 main sports we're in is football and basketball. If you combine the population of football and basketball, they're literally 0.1% of the black male population. So you have millions upon millions upon millions of black people all over the world. If you're black and you grew up in this country, you know people that had what they call hoop dreams, or football dreams, and it's by the millions across this country for a job openings that are only in the hundreds, and you have people that are in the millions. So that means the average black person is going to not make it there. So that is sort of a marshmallow test dynamic, is when your attention is so wanting to grasp onto this dream, and you're seeing the girls and the money and the mansions and the cars, that you don't look at the big picture of your life as far as being a pillar of your community. Be the doctor that's in your community. Be the lawyer that's in your community. We need so many facets of things as a community. You can't have two particular fields of focus, sports and entertainment, as the only way, because we're going to be very unbalanced, which we are. So that is another aspect of lack of discipline, even discipline of goals. Like I said, it is so many layers of it. You couldn't even take it all in one shot or one commentary or one study session. It has a ripple effect into everything. I'll use an example of somebody that's so-called, in the world of conscious YouTube fame, Brother Polite. So to get deeper into it, it doesn't even matter about intelligence. Discipline and intelligence, they kind of relate, but they don't go hand in hand. You can be very smart and still was raised undisciplined and still have bad discipline. We have plenty of examples of that. I'll use Brother Polite as an example. Brother Polite, is from Brownsville, East New York section of Brooklyn. It was probably one of the toughest, if not the toughest, parts of Brooklyn to grow up in. Very own Brother Zabak is from the East New York section, Brownsville section of Brooklyn. Very tough growing up, especially in the 80s and 90s, and even today. So Brother Polite coming up from that, having no mother or father, being sort of like an orphan. I mean, that's even a worse tragedy, has just been being raised by a single parent, but on top of that, being raised by no parents at all, growing up in the crack era. But to give the brother his just due, he managed to try to seek out some sort of knowledge. Like, when you don't have that father many times, but the spirit of intelligence is there, you're going to seek out some sort of father, and he became a student of the teachings of Dr. York. So obviously, moving forward through his life, he came to prominence on the deep underground scene throughout that whole Nuwapian movement, and then eventually, in the more recent years, in the YouTube era, joining up with Brother Sonetta. Through Sonetta, obviously he's very intelligent, well-spoken, very well-versed on many levels. He got fame and notoriety on Sonetta's platform, which elevated Sonetta too, to a large degree, because a lot of people would, tune in to see what Brother Polite was talking about, or would, whatever debate Brother Polite was getting into. The thing is, once again, how intelligence, the three marshmallow effect, which of course is overall the subject matter as far as lack of discipline, can affect him too on many different levels. Because he elevated so fast in the YouTube world, which is massively got his name notoriety amongst pretty much the entire conscious community or woke community. he took that, and not that I know every detail, so I can't speak on something I don't know every detail about thoroughly, but many say, or many have testified, that he scammed a lot of them as far as money is concerned. And many have said that he scammed a lot of people as far as some of his credentials, as far as him being an author of X amount of books and what have you. What he did that was positive, once again, is be a very well-spoken person and very eloquent. And there are a lot of things Polite said that I agree with, as far as health-wise, and things he said about the meaning of polygyny. And he's not wrong on a lot of things, but your intentions are really the heart and soul of where you're going to go to and what is going to become of you. So, to keep a long story short, as far as Brother Polite is concerned, he ended up, his popularity ended up getting too big for Sonetta TV, Sonetta's channel. So he became, his first big leap into the mainstream was him teaming up with NBA basketball player Ron Artest, who changed his name to Meta World Peace, as his personal advisor on the Breakfast Club, which put that as of now, that's almost going on 1 million views of that particular episode of that the Breakfast Club radio show / YouTube show. Then rolling with that fame, he ended up on Vlad TV, which also got a very large amount of views. The three Marshmallow effect comes into play, is that he made a very vital mistake in his ascension, is basically seeing whatever money he made, and I'm not sure how he made his money, but he took that to just skip town and pretty much cut himself off from Sonetta and moved to California, the LA area, setting up his home in Beverly Hills, and pretty much burning the bridge he came over on, cutting ties with Sonetta, and in turn cutting ties with the whole conscious community that he was dealing with. So, like I said, going into Three Marshmallow Effect, he went those two shows, the Vlad TV and the Breakfast Club, really, skyrocket his whole agenda to him wanting to become some producer and this, and there's nothing wrong with any of that. But the thing is, the mistake he made is you cannot burn the bridge you came over on, and you cannot alienate your own fan base, because once you alienate people, your own support system, who do you have to turn to? And as smart as he is, you would think he would have known that. If you're going to finesse the people, don't burn your bridge that quickly. It's not like his ascension was over a long period of time where you saw a lot of his works come to fruition. So it's almost like a scam artist. You made yourself known, you promised the people XYZ, then you get up and leave. And once again, that's like snatching a marshmallow. Instead of waiting it out and to see how things play out, you jump ship and go to California, and then now he's sort of in and out. Like, he pops up here, he pops up there, he says he's retiring, and then he says he's not, he's back. So he's another example of that. To move to another example, you have Kanye West. Kanye West is another person that highly intelligent as far as artistic wise, that he got up so high on the ladder that he started to alienate his fan base, and then you can see the insecurity as for him. His first major relationship in the mainstream was Amber Rose, who's basically a former stripper / call girl. When you see all the exaggerated features, the breast implants and the butt injection and implants, once again, the three marshmallow dynamic. You have to grab what you see, because you see breast and and fake behind, rather than that contemplation, rather than saying, wait a minute, I mean, that's nice and everything that she's shapely, but is this person really the best for me? Then moving from her into Kim Kardashian, which is like the eyes on the prize, snatching a marshmallow. Oh, she's the most talked about celebrity in the media. I want that. I gotta have that. In many situations where you see Kanye West, total lack of discipline. Once again, not growing up with a father and then losing a mother, at the height of his career, causes that lack of discipline. And you see lack of discipline just about everything Kanye does. Wanting to be associated with Trump, having meltdowns, and it just goes to show you how, once again, that lack of discipline, in the study of Three Marshmallow Effect, which is the deeper psyche of the black man, how that goes into all walks of life, from artists, celebrities, to woke people, conscious people, to the average black and Hispanic person, the everyday working person. Black China, the same thing. Coming from the strip world, that's another place, the female version of the Three Marshmallow Effect, where you see these strippers. All you have to do, you don't even though it's glorified, especially in Atlanta. I think Atlanta and Dallas are probably the two biggest where they actually has a stripping culture. Also in Florida, Fort Lauderdale, Miami, where there's actually a stripping culture, where stripping is like considered to be the thing to do, like the cool thing to do and to be a part of. You have Eve that came out of that. You have, of course, Cardi B that came out of the strip club, the stripping world, and Black China, who married Rob Kardashian. Once again, that Three Marshmallow Effect. Okay, I see this dude, I'm just going to have a baby with him and lock that down and get paid. It's just like there's no contemplation to what the effects of that is going to be in your life. But when you see who her mother is and how her mother is, you see where it can almost make you feel sorry for a lot of our people, like Black China, because did she ever have a chance? Once again, growing up with no father and have a mother that's bitter like that. I mean, and that actually supports, that lifestyle of the stripping lifestyle, the breast implants, the being a whore, having a baby with this one and that one. The strip, as much as stripping is glorified, you don't go to stripping. No black female in that stripping world and Hispanic female in that stripping world goes there because things are going good in your life. Stripping, every stripper that ever stripped in one of these clubs, like I said, particularly in Atlanta, Dallas, Florida, where it's a culture, is there because things went well in their life. It's there, as I said before, we're in a constant state of survival. So it's another survival instinct. I'm going to take my clothes off, go in the back room and do, what you can only imagine, and get money, get cash. And then we get so accustomed to it that we start glorifying it. And it becomes, we start to identify it. And then you have people that look up to that. So that's another female survival instinct. Yet Three Marshmallow Effect, where something easy, the low-hanging fruit, you can grab on. Any female can pretty much go to a strip club. Any halfway attractive female go to a strip club and try to survive with dollars, but yet losing every bit of their spirit and their soul doing that. To use Eve again as an example, the same thing. Three Marshmallow dynamics, grabbing on. She did what Kanye did. Came from Philly, undisciplined, went to be a stripper, segued that into rap, but that wasn't good enough for her, where she actually, had to go marry some millionaire or billionaire from England, where she was basically bought. Like he bought this black woman. He had some kind of fetish, and he bought this snooty billionaire that's never been around black people in his life. Basically bought Eve and have her halfway raising his children. It's like the slave days. And the Most High has a sense of humor, and the Most High is powerful in many ways, because out of, obviously, Eve from Genesis was beguiled by Satan the snake, and obviously she was a black woman, she's our people. And the most famous Eve since Eve, the original Eve from Garden of Eden, was beguiled by a snake. So the most Eve from thousands of years ago in Genesis was beguiled by a snake, and Eve that we know as Eve in modern times, she was also beguiled by a snake. There's this picture of Eve where you can, it's such a demonic energy on the Eve, and if you're not looking for it, you would miss it. On one hand, she's holding, she took a picture and she's doing a white power gesture sign, and on the other hand, she's doing a Baphomet sign. So literally Eve, like I said, you can't make this stuff up with the Most High. She's literally showing a hand gesture that she has made an allegiance with Satan, just like the original Eve did back in the Garden of Eden. And coincidence, I think not, that her name is Eve and she's very famous. So the two Eves in the beginning times and the end times, both were beguiled by Satan. And like I said, there's no coincidence. The Most High manifested her name to be Eve to show the world, like, look, this was a black woman, and this is something evil that she did. To go back to the early stages of discipline, and as a awakened people, how we can fix that as far as trying to get ourselves prepared for the Most High. As far as the marshmallow effect goes, what the deep meaning behind it is of our children setting a pattern of no discipline, which, like I said, it is so complicated, it's even hard to get into words. I'm trying my best to formulate it into a commentary that makes sense, where I'm not going all over the place, but it's just because the lack of discipline, it touches everything. From the time you're a child, is when we're just pieces of a community. As men, we make up the family structure, and then the family structure makes up communities, and the communities make up the nation. So when something is wrong at the lowest level, even as far as having our sons and daughters have no discipline as children, and they grow up without discipline, it totally sets things up for how we move forward, or how we stay stuck as a nation of people. To give you a good example of a modern so-called Judite family, so-called African American family that's in the public eye, is T.I. And by no means do I mean T.I. is perfect, but there's one thing, when you observe with the spiritual eye or discernment that T.I. does, is he does speak to his children intellectually, and there's a subliminal discipline you see him doing with his children. Right, I can't, that would be a whole commentary to break down what T.I. does, but to just give a quick example, there's an episode where his children wanted to make a lemonade stand. Now, I know a lot of these reality shows, they set up things just to make episodes, but even in that, there's always going to be truth of how he deals with his family, and just the way he was talking to his sons about knowing how to earn $1, and knowing how to make the lemonade, and knowing how to sell it, and knowing how to keep the profit. That's what black families need to do. Like, he got like I said, I would say it's perfect. He has his wife has the fake eye implants to make her eyes blue. She's always dyeing her hair blonde, and she's light skinned already. But that's not to nitpick on her, but that at least, even they had their breakups and their makeups, at least he kept his family tight together. And he does, as far as somebody, that's representing rap in the streets, and the thug, and talking about guns and all the stereotypical negative stuff, he does handle his children very well to be that modern black man. A lot of times, the average black man in the streets, we consider to be in this generation, would think it's corny to be like the Cosby Show. But T.I. could show you that you could still have swagger and be have be cool, what they call cool, and still instill things and be very articulate with your children, and let them and develop their mind in the right way, where they wouldn't his kids wouldn't fail the marshmallow test. The way he speaks to them, that's how you develop. That's how you don't fail that marshmallow test. That's how you get contemplation. Um, he's definitely a good example of that. Like, so I recommend anybody, if they want to just get the idea what I'm talking about, just watch little clips of Ti and how he talks to his children. That's the direction the black people should go in to build up this nation. It's too much unruly jakes out there. We make up the nation. Um, when you The sad thing is, when you see out, living in New York City, observe, especially particularly on the subways, observing white parents or a white mother talking to their white child. Their child could be 3, 4, 5 years old. You'll see the white mother with a book or something when they're like talking to their 3-year-old or 4-year-old like a grown adult. She'll be like, well, Emily, what did you learn today? Okay, how do you feel about what's going on as far as politics and how we can make the world a better place? And give an example of how I hear, if you observe white people and their children, how even at a young age they're speaking to them in a very functional manner, and they're developing their mind a certain way, and that is major thing to get our to have that deficiency of discipline restored in our people. Another note I'm going to add is that a level of why the black children will snatch the marshmallow off the plate rather than wait 15 minutes to get more is that a lot of times in these households, the diet is a layer aspect of it. Like going to the store, as a kid, I used to think it was normal to just have your parent just buy you some chips, cookies. Of course, the infamous McDonald's. Seeing black parents in McDonald's, like having 5, 6 kids, and they're feeding them chicken McNuggets and French fries. Of course, you're wiring their brain to think it's called fast food. You get it fast. So you order the food, you sit down, you put it in their mouth. Instead of them watching their parents cook a meal at home and helping them cut up the carrots, helping them cut the cheese and the bread and whatever, helping them prepare. That also plays into discipline, because that shows you that you're showing the child, like, look, you're gonna have to make your own food. We can't just eat this processed garbage in the street like that. So that, like I said, there's so many levels to the dynamics of this three marshmallow test, which is ultimately contemplation and decision making. And a lot of it, once again, is food. Like, so if that child that's doing that marshmallow test, his parents will take him, his mother or father, whoever, takes him to McDonald's where he's just stuffing French fries in his mouth. Of course, he's going to be inclined to grab the marshmallow off the plate without even thinking. He's going to get more later. You have when it goes into adulthood, as far as like I said, that's why they have the book, The 48 Laws of Power, Robert Greene. In Esau, like I said, Esau knows us better, unfortunately, than we know ourselves a lot as a race. All these, The Art of War, Sun Tzu, and Esau reads all those books. You'll see it as an adult if you're around Edomites and they're talking on a high level. And I've been in situations, I've been working since I was 15, so I've been in situations where I had Edomite co-workers and Jake co-workers, and that's the only time where I mingle amongst Esau. is at work, you'll see 80% of the time, 75 to 80% of the time of working since I was 15, Jake cannot keep up with Esau on any sort of deep intellectual level, but unless it's talking about sports or females. But anything else, like if it's going to any structure, Jake can't keep up, and Esau likes that. When I was a child, before I was around Edomites, I used to think Esau really wanted us to be smarter. I used to think Edomites were frustrated because they think we weren't on their level and they want us to catch up. But as an adult, I started to realize that Esau likes the fact that you don't know, because I see the expressions on their faces when a Jake is talking about, yo, you seen LeBron, you seen Bron, yo, Bron went down, yo, Steph is the man, yo, they start talking about basketball, and then Esau joining, Steph Curry's the man, he's like an archer, man, he just shoots all those shots, man. LeBron is great too, but he's no Jordan, he one day he might be Jordan. They'll keep it on that level and they'll have a ball. But if I'm talking with another brother that's what they call woke or much more conscious, they'll have this look on his face like, oh, what are you guys talking about? What's that about? Like, okay, let's talk about something else. You guys are too serious right now. Esau will be sneaky and try to break up the conversation, and that goes back to slave days, because particularly after the whole Nat Turner situation, they didn't even want black people gathering. They even outlawed black churches at that time. They wanted even when they had to serve God, they wanted black people to be up in the back pews, or if they had a balcony, they would have to sit up segregated. They didn't want, they outlawed churches. So in other words, they don't like us trying to contemplate things. They want our minds to be on the level of an animal. And like I said, as an adult, I started to observe that they get uncomfortable if you're talking on their level. Another thing is, if you're talking one-on-one with them, and they start to feel like you're exceeding them in intelligence, it's like a red alert goes off in their mind. They'll start asking you, where did you learn that from? Like me and Zabak joke in the past, who learned you that? Like they would say on the plantation, who learned you that, boy? Like a slave master, for example, to use a hypothetical example, if a slave master came across a slave in the cotton field and he said, where's Jethro at? And say Jethro was another slave. Oh, massa, he up north. He went yonder over there north. That slave master would get crazy. Like, who told you what north is? How do you know what north is? Well, massa, north is a direction. A direction? How do you know what a direction is? So in other words, if you get the picture, you knowing something is a constant threat to them. So the fact that you know what a direction is a problem. Because if you know a direction, that means you know an escape. And it can go on and on. So like I said, as an adult, I realized that Esau, even if it's on a conscious or subconscious level, they do not like to feel that you're even remotely close to their level of intelligence, or even worse, supersedes their intelligence. If you say something that they're wrong about, they really get uncomfortable. They'll start questioning whether they want to know how you knew that, who taught you that. Like, in other words, you could not come up with that yourself. Somebody helped you understand that. To make another example of that, a media example, there's a scientist, astronomer, Neil deGrasse Tyson, who probably is the most intellectual, as far as IQ, black man that's in the media. And he can break down anything. And Esau likes it, but he doesn't. He likes it because Neil deGrasse Tyson can break down a lot of knowledge, even though he takes on the spirit of Esau in the sense that, of course, he married a white woman, and of course he's an atheist. But as far as science and stuff like that, and stars and stuff, he's got it broken down. And you hear a lot of Edomites that have an issue with Neil deGrasse Tyson, and they say, oh no, there's another astronomer named Carl Sagan who's along the same lines as Neil deGrasse Tyson. They'll say, oh no, he learned everything from Carl Sagan. In other words, as much as highly intelligent as Neil deGrasse Tyson is, they say a white man is responsible for his intelligence. So that's another example of Esau really not liking you to be intelligent. And to tie it in with the 3 marshmallow test, he does those tests to make him feel good and to brag about it. That's why I played the clip of the Edomite speaking about the marshmallow test, because they like those physical tests or examinations that prove to them is very visual, and it proves to them that they're better. They constantly need that reassurance. So to wrap this up, if anybody can get anything out of this commentary, especially if you have children, make sure your children, like, that's why I use T.I. as an example of that show of somebody that's modern, that the average black man on the street can relate to. Make sure in their developmental years, you make sure they understand discipline and contemplation. Like, your mind is like a traffic signal. You have a red light, a yellow light, and a green light. Having no discipline is like having no yellow light. If all stop signs in the world remove their yellow light, there'll be crashes everywhere, because the yellow light gives you the time to think. It's not go, it's not stop. It's like, let me think, let me see what the environment is. Do I have enough time to speed up, to accelerate the car and run the light, or do I have is too much traffic, it's too busy, let me slow down and stop the car and hit the brakes. And that's the dynamic in life. You need to contemplate. Contemplation leads to strategy. Strategy leads to plans. Plans lead to actions. Actions lead to building. And as a nation, in the younger generations coming up, one of our biggest issues as a nation is discipline. You know, you'll see it in every aspect. Like I said, from the entertainer to the truth, to the Nation of Islam, to the Kemet. We all lack discipline from 50 years of the father being outside of the home, which was a mental weapon, but that's a different story. So if you're a Jake with no discipline, be better at discipline. Be better with before you make any decisions, sit back and think about your next move before you make it, and teach that to your children. And we can all get together, build strong families, and get our head together and wake up the people we need to wake up, so the Most High can make his return and we can get out of this captivity. So with that, this is Brother Nalah. I bid you blessings, and until next time, Shalom.